The rain had begun much earlier than anyone expected. A steady drizzle had turned into thick sheets of water cascading from the sky, drumming against rooftops, overflowing drains, and chasing people off the streets of Willowbridge, a small town that normally wore tranquility like a second skin. But on this particular evening, nothing felt tranquil. The storm had stolen the sun hours before its time, cloaking the town in a bleak, shivering gloom. Mila Turner held her jacket tightly around her shoulders as she hurried toward the bus stop. She had stayed late at the community library where she worked, reorganizing shelves after a group of 7th graders had turned the reading section into what looked like a battlefield of books and half-eaten snacks. Normally, she didn't mind the chaos. Children were loud, expressive, and wonderfully curious, but tonight she wished she had left earlier. The wind bit through her clothes, and her shoes squelched with every step, soaked through long ago. The bus stop was empty. A single flickering street lamp cast an uneven pool of yellow light on the pavement. Mila checked her phone, no signal. She sighed. The storm had likely disrupted the network again. She lifted her head, hoping to see headlights cutting through the darkness, but the road lay empty. She lowered her bag onto the bench and sat, pulling her feet up so her toes wouldn't rest in the growing puddle beneath her. That was when she heard it. A small, whimpering sound carried faintly by the wind. She straightened. At first, she assumed it might be an animal sheltering from the storm, but the sound came again, clearer this time. It wasn't an animal. It was a child's voice. Mila's heart lurched. She stood, scanning the dim surroundings. The rain blurred everything into misty silhouettes. She moved toward the sound cautiously, calling out, "Hello? Is someone there?" The whimpering stopped. Mila listened harder, ignoring the shiver crawling up her spine. "It's okay," she said gently, "I'm here to help." A faint shuffle responded from behind the old newspaper stand across the road. Mila rushed over, her shoes splashing through water. She crouched down and found a small boy curled up behind the stand, hugging his knees tightly to his chest. His clothes were drenched, sticking to his tiny frame, and his short brown hair clung to his forehead. He couldn't have been older than 6. "Oh sweetheart," Mila breathed, lowering herself beside him. "Are you hurt?" The boy shook his head but didn't speak. His eyes, wide, frightened, and shimmering with tears, followed her every movement. "My name is Mila," she said softly. "Can you tell me your name?" He hesitated, then whispered, "Evan." "Hi, Evan." She offered a small smile. "It's really cold out here. Do you want to come sit with me at the bus stop? There's a little roof. It's not perfect, but it's better than staying out in the rain." Evan looked uncertain, but after a moment, he nodded. Mila offered her hand. His was small and trembling as it slipped into hers. Gently, she helped him up and guided him to the bus stop. She settled him onto the bench, then removed her jacket and draped it around his shoulders. The boy stared at her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher, gratitude mixed with disbelief, as though kindness was something he was unaccustomed to receiving. Mila glanced around again, but the road remained empty. She couldn't leave him here. The bus might not come for hours, if at all. The storm had grown worse, and she had seen the power flicker in buildings on her way out. It wouldn't be safe to wait. "Evan," she said carefully, "can you tell me where your parents are?" He swallowed hard. I don't know. Were you with them before you came here?" He shook his head again, eyes brimming. "I was at home. Mommy went to get medicine because I had a fever last night. She told me to stay inside. But then the wind broke the window. It made a loud sound. I got scared and ran outside to find her. But I got lost." Mila's chest tightened. The poor child had been wandering alone in this storm. "It's okay," she soothed. "We'll find your mom. But first, we need to get somewhere warm." The library wasn't far, and she had a spare key. It would provide shelter until the storm passed. She grabbed her bag and stood. "Come on," she said gently. "We're going to the library." Evan clung to her hand as they hurried through the rain. Mila shielded him as much as she could, though she was soaked and shivering. When they reached the library, she fumbled with her keys, her fingers stiff and numb, but finally managed to unlock the door. Warmth enveloped them instantly. Mila guided Evan inside and turned on a few lights. The soft glow illuminated the rows of books, the only welcoming sight on a stormy night. She found an old blanket in the lost and found box and wrapped it around him. Then she prepared a warm drink using the staff kitchen's electric kettle, grateful that the power was still holding. As Evan sipped the hot chocolate, tiny hands cupped around the mug, Mila knelt beside him again. "Do you know your mom's phone number?" He shook his head. "Your last name?" Another small shake. Mila exhaled slowly. She needed to contact the police station, but with the storm, she didn't know if the lines were working. She grabbed the emergency phone on the staff wall. A dial tone hummed. Relief washed over her. She quickly called the station. Within minutes, Officer Gerald Briggs answered. She explained the situation, and though the storm had caused chaos across the town, he assured her they would begin searching for Evan's mother immediately. He promised to come as soon as possible to pick him up. When she hung up, she found Evan sitting on the floor, flipping uncertainly through a picture book. His earlier fear had softened but hadn't disappeared. She sat beside him. "Do you want me to read with you?" He nodded. As she read aloud, his head slowly leaned against her shoulder. The steady rhythm of her voice seemed to calm him. Eventually his breathing steadied, and he drifted asleep. Mila carefully rested his head on her lap, brushed his damp hair aside, and watched him. How long had he been wandering alone? How terrified he must have been. She wished she could find his mother herself, but in this weather, she'd be more of a hindrance than help. About an hour later, the library door creaked open. Officer Briggs stepped inside, dripping from the rain, his flashlight casting long beams across the room. "Mila," he called softly. "Over here," she whispered. He approached, his expression softening when he saw the sleeping child. "Poor boy," he murmured. "We've got officers out searching the northern neighborhoods. A woman reported missing earlier, and she described a child who matches him. She's frantic." Mila's heart loosened. "That must be his mom." "We think so. We'll bring him to the station. Once she arrives, they'll reunite." Mila hesitated. She gently shook Evan awake. He blinked sleepily at her before noticing the officer. Fear flickered in his eyes, and he moved closer to her. "It's okay," Mila assured him. "This is Officer Briggs. He's going to help you find your mom." Evan looked at her, searching for reassurance. Finally, he nodded. But when Briggs reached out a hand, Evan gripped her shirt tightly. "Will you come too?" he whispered. Mila's throat tightened. "Of course," she said softly. Together, they drove through the storm to the station. Mila sat beside Evan in the back seat, holding his hand, letting him know he wasn't alone. When they arrived, several officers were already gathered near the entrance. Inside, the waiting room was dim, with a single overhead light flickering. A woman with soaked hair and shaking hands stood near the counter, speaking rapidly to an officer. Her face was pale with worry. When she turned and saw Evan, she froze. Her lips trembled. "Evan?" The boy's eyes widened. "Mommy?" He tore away from Mila and ran into his mother's arms. She fell to her knees, embracing him so tightly that her shoulders shook with sobs. "I thought I lost you," she cried. "I thought, oh thank God, thank God." Evan clung to her. Mila felt tears sting her own eyes. The reunion was raw, emotional, and utterly beautiful. Kindness had carried this child to safety, but love had brought him home. The woman looked up at Mila with trembling gratitude. "You saved my son," she whispered. "How can I ever thank you?" "You don't have to," Mila said softly. "I'm just glad he's safe." But the woman shook her head. She stood, taking Mila's hands in hers. "No. You were a stranger, and you still cared for him as if he were your own. That kind of kindness changes lives." Mila didn't know what to say. She had simply done what she hoped anyone would do. As mother and son were led inside to complete paperwork, Mila sat down in the waiting area, exhausted but relieved. She stared at the rain tapping against the window. It seemed softer now, gentler, as if the storm itself had been waiting for this moment to ease. A few minutes later, Evan returned, still holding his mother's hand. He walked up to Mila and reached into the pocket of her jacket, the one she had draped around him earlier. He pulled out a small, crumpled paper star. Its edges were worn, as though he had folded and unfolded it many times. "This is for you," he said shyly. "Mommy helped me make it this morning. She said it's a lucky star. You should have it now." Mila knelt before him, touched beyond words. "Thank you, Evan. I'll take good care of it." He hugged her suddenly, tightly, his small arms wrapped around her neck. "Thank you for finding me." When he pulled away, his mother placed a hand on Mila's shoulder. "You didn't just find him," she said softly. "You brought him home." As they left the station together, their silhouettes framed in the fading stormlight, Mila placed the paper star in her pocket and closed her hand around it. It felt warm, almost glowing, like a quiet reminder that kindness, no matter how small, always finds its way to where it's needed most. And sometimes, she realized, it even finds its way home.